Mike Pounds.
Tolerated.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Wait, you're getting nervous, man.
Around the nation, DYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf here. Welcome to the show. It's Friday. Got a great Friday show for you guys today. A lot of stories we're going to talk about. We have, of course, Donald Trump continues his revenge spree against all those that have dared to stand up to him. So we got a couple of stories on that. Then we're going to switch gears, and we are going to go to more Democratic primary news. So we have, I believe we have a debate tonight that will be happening. So that's going to be interesting. That is one where, you know, the first post-Iowa debate, Bernie Sanders, now the front runner, Pete Buttigieg, very close behind, at least coming off of Iowa with a little bit of a bump. We're going to see how Biden reacts to it. We're going to see, like I said, how Pete Buttigieg is going to handle this. Michael Bloomberg, I don't think he's in this current debate. But hey, thanks to the DNC rules changes, he will be in future debates, very likely. Anyway, so we'll see what happens there. So we've got a new poll out that's great for Bernie Sanders. Then we've got a little bit of a disastrous story for Elizabeth Warren's campaign. And we're going to talk about Pete Buttigieg quite a bit. So we got Buttigieg and his billionaire donors, and we've got some doctored videos. So interesting stuff here. So that's fun. Please like and share the stream. You're not going to want to miss these stories today. So like and share, very important. I guess, before we get into it, by the way, it is currently 65 degrees in Antarctica. Just figured I'd share that. 65 degrees. It's the same temperature as Florida. Antarctica is not the place where you would think there would be a balmy spring, summer-like day. But it is. Look, I'm not saying, obviously we know the difference between weather and climate, but you have record temperatures in places where they shouldn't have these record temperatures. And so, I don't know, you might want to look into it. Okay, we might want to look into, doing something about that. Maybe making sure that, the Arctic doesn't melt. Because, there's a lot of obviously dormant viruses and things like that. A lot of trapped methane in that area as well, trapped by the ice. And so, yeah, okay. So, a little bit of a problem. But anyway, we will get into the first story here. So, let's go. By the way, Super Chat's very welcome. I read those first, as well as member comments are next and all that. So, if you want to help out the show, please send a Super Chat or ask your question. Again, we always need your help here. All right. Anyway. As expected, following the acquittal in the Senate impeachment trial, Donald Trump has now turned to punishing his political opponents, his political enemies. Now, it's reported that that Trump is actually going to begin with purging Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman from the National Security. The Let me start that again. The National Security Council. I don't know why I got hung up on that. All right. It's reported that Trump will begin purging Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman from the National Security Council. Now, he is the aide, of course, that testified during the House Democrats' impeachment hearings. Now, according to the Washington Post, sources say that Vindman will be removed from the National Security Council and will be assigned to a position inside the Defense Department. So it's not exactly he's fired completely, but they're basically getting him out of the way. Like, no, you're not going to be part of this council anymore. We're going to move you somewhere else in the Defense Department and then maybe get rid of you later. Now, according to the Washington Post, Vindman had already informed officials at the National Security Council that he intended to leave his post anyway by the end of the month. However, Trump will move him before that. So now that's interesting, right? So he already says, look, I'm going to leave anyway, right? I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to go to the Defense Department. I got to get away from this guy. Trump says, no, you're not going to leave at the end of the month. You're going to leave now. Like, get out. I think it's this petty way of course, getting revenge. Oh, you can't quit. I'm going to fire you. Except it's not necessarily firing, but certainly seems like it's a demotion, perhaps. So it is some revenge, right? And you're going after the guy that had the balls to testify against you, and that's what this is. And that's not all, of course, because as I told you before, Donald Trump is extremely petty. Now, according to that same report, Trump has mocked Vindman in private and has discussed removing other national security officials that testified in the impeachment hearings, according to sources. So it is a literal purge of disloyal officials. Not disloyal to the United States, which they're supposed to serve, but disloyal to Donald Trump. And that's what's going on, right? He is removing any and all obstacles to his rule. That is fascism. That is very fascistic. And so he's basically using whatever power he can to punish his political opponents. And again, any of his opponents are basically anybody who dares to speak out against him. So, I mean, look, there's that, right? And for those he can't fire, by the way, he has other ways of getting to people. He will, of course, use his Twitter account to encourage his supporters to viciously attack those other people. Okay, so we're going to go to that. Case in point, Mitt Romney. So
I don't like people who use their faith as justification for doing what they know is wrong. Nor do I like people who say, I pray for you, when they know that that's not so. So many people have been hurt, and we can't let that go on.
All right, so that's Trump taking a shot at both Nancy Pelosi and Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, of course, making his argument, his vote against, to convict Donald Trump during the impeachment trial. He's trying to make a faith argument based on that, a moral argument based on that. And so I get it. It is funny how Donald Trump talks about, I don't like it when people do that. But wait, you do that all the time. You use religion on your side, and it's Republican 101, in order to do the wrong thing, to go after, for example, gay people, transgender people in the military, etc. All those sorts of bad faith, literally bad faith arguments used. And so you do that. And now you're going to go after Mitt Romney for doing that, who actually did do the correct thing and the right thing, and the thing that we had hoped that a lot of Republicans would decide to do. Now, of course, all these Republicans are absolute 100% cowards, and they bow down to President Trump, and they kiss his ring and they kiss his ass, more likely. And so all we had was Mitt Romney. But there's a reason, of course, that these Republicans were afraid, and this is why. Mitt Romney has been attacked viciously afterwards, and not just again by President Trump, but by President Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., who said, "We're going to drum this guy out of the party. Let's go. Let's get him out of the party." And he's not one of us. Oh no, wait a minute. Mitt Romney is incredibly conservative. So what are you talking about? The problem with Romney is that he's not a Trump cultist. Now, here's the thing: Romney's record, he votes for almost for everything Donald Trump, wants policy wise. So the only disagreement here, again, because he gives Trump everything he wants, the only disagreement here is how civil they are, right? And so that's the issue. But there's one more here. Trump also went after Romney, and he said, quote, "He has no sign of principles." No sign of principles. Look, I think that what Romney did, just like most Republicans, is a little bit self-serving in the end, because he can go and later on and stand up and say in the post-Trump era, "Hey man, look, I was one of the good ones. I stood up against Donald Trump and I made sure to hold him accountable." So that puts me above pretty much every other Republican, hashtag Mitt 2024, right? I don't know if he's going to run for president again, but I do think that a person who believes that he's going to inherit a planet when he dies would likely have delusions of wanting to run for president. Again, maybe quote me, hear me now, quote me later. I don't know. But that's just my thoughts on that. But look, as far as Trump goes, I think this is only the first phase of getting his revenge. I think he's going to go after everybody who dared speak out against him, because he's an authoritarian, and now he is an empowered authoritarian. And so people like Suzanne Collins, who, had hoped that he had learned his lesson, now regrets saying that because he's obviously not learned his lesson. He's going to go after her too. And he's going after, Mitt Romney, and he's going after everybody else, because at the end of the day, the Republicans don't serve the Constitution. They serve Donald Trump because they are the party of Trump. Okay. Moving on. It appears the Republicans in the Senate are deciding to go after Hunter Biden after all. So now I had reported before that Republicans were generally fighting amongst themselves with the pro-Trump faction and the rest of the Republicans who just wanted to get away from this Ukraine stuff. They've decided to subpoena not subpoena. They actually went to get records from the Treasury Department on Hunter Biden to do an investigation. So now Yahoo News first reported on Thursday that the Treasury Department had handed over highly confidential information in response to a November request from Senate Finance Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley and Homeland Security Finance Chairman Ron Johnson. Now, this is apparently linked to suspicious activity reports filed with departments by financial institutions. So, look, understand that they, have this department that if you see some sort of suspicious stuff, you get suspicious activity, you're moving money, maybe you're laundering money, right? Well, okay, apparently a couple of these flagged Hunter Biden, which, by the way, they've also flagged the Trump organization, but okay. And actually that plays a big part in this as a sort of comparison, right? A juxtaposition of what they're doing when it comes to Hunter Biden versus Donald Trump. Now, again, I think this has everything to do with Donald Trump and his revenge, as well as trying to go after Hunter Biden and hurt his political opponents. His Treasury Department had blocked a request earlier for the president's tax filings. Now, the reason that those tax filings are important is it could have revealed evidence of money laundering or tax fraud. And we already seem to have some evidence that Donald Trump had engaged in alleged tax fraud as well. I don't know about you, but I think that's a crime. And so, what he's alleged to have done, President Trump, is that he inflated his assets to get loans and deflated them when it was time to pay his taxes. Again, tax fraud. Now, we don't know what Hunter Biden was alleged to have done. And so I guess we'll find out more information if the Republican Senate decides to move forward on this now that they have this information. Now, as far as the obviously the Trump's taxes, they were blocked by Steven Mnuchin. Now, in April of 2019, Mnuchin actually said the legal implications of this request could affect protections for all Americans against politically motivated disclosures of personal tax information, regardless of which party is in power. Basically saying, oh, no, we're just protecting everybody else. We're protecting you guys and Donald Trump. Mostly Donald Trump, but we're going to make the claim that it protects you guys as well from political, investigations while we do a political investigation. Right. Okay. Now, obviously, this is non-tax financial information related to Joe Biden's family, Hunter Biden in specific, but still, this is part of an investigation designed to, of course, help Trump's claim that, oh no, there's corruption, right? Vice President used his presidency, he used his vice presidency, his position of power, in order to benefit his son, who served on the board of Burisma. That's the Ukrainian energy company, while his father was involved in setting policy in Eastern Europe. So now that would, of course, be the wrong thing to do. Why would you do that? Why would you take that position and get paid $50,000 a month when you don't know anything about Ukrainian gas? To me, again, that does seem like an effort to get influence. However, there's no evidence that they actually use that position, that Joe Biden used his position to help in that regard. I think, personally, that it was Ukrainian saying, hey, look, you're a Biden, so maybe we can get some points by hiring you and paying you a whole bunch of money. Again, that seems super shady, but when you look at what Joe Biden actually did in Ukraine, you can't really see that there were any ways that he had used that position to help his son. As much as I don't like Joe Biden, and as much as I think that this was wrong on the part of Hunter Biden, there's no evidence of any illegal doings, any illegal wrongdoing. So now, under Ukrainian and American law, there were no laws that were actually broken here, but Republicans are hoping that they find otherwise. Well, okay, do an investigation. Go ahead. There was already an investigation that was done by Victor Shokin's replacement. That, of course, was the guy who was fired thanks to pressure by Joe Biden. Now, that's one of the linchpins of the Republicans' investigation into this, right? So they say, oh, Victor Shokin, he was investigating Burisma in order to find the Ukrainian corruption of which Hunter Biden and Joe Biden are involved. And Joe Biden, he came in, he swooped in, and he got that guy fired because he didn't want them to find evidence of Joe Biden's corruption. That's the Republican claim, right? That's the conspiracy theory, right? In reality, in the real world, Shokin was fired, yes, thanks to pressure to Joe Biden. But it's because he wasn't investigating Burisma. He didn't launch an investigation. He was hired because he said, I'm going to go after Ukrainian corruption. There's this natural gas company. We think that there's corruption going on there. So I'm going to go after it, right? And then he gets into power, and then he doesn't pursue the investigation. Literally wasn't doing their job. So Joe Biden, along with the international community, they decided, well, look, if you're not doing your job, then maybe you should not be in your job, and had successfully pressured and got him out. And so if you do an investigation into this, well, then that's what you're going to find. You're going to find that the Bidens acted completely, according to the law. Again, You can talk about personal corruption. You can talk about, hey, he was taking money that for not knowing anything. But then again, there's a lot of people in positions of power in government that take lots of money and get into positions of power that they're not qualified for. I can think of a couple in the Trump administration, Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. You want to talk about them getting into positions of power without having the requisite knowledge to be in those positions. Well, that's an interesting conversation. And perhaps maybe the House could look into that. Or, the Democrats get the Senate. Maybe they could look into that as well. I mean, it's the same kind of deal, right? Ivanka gets to sit in and get Chinese patents after sitting in with world leaders. And so, there's a little bit of corruption. So you want to talk about corruption? Republicans do corruption a lot of the time. So, but anyway, this is, to me, it seems like it's going to be another Benghazi, another Fast and Furious. So go ahead and waste more time and taxpayer money on another investigation. Joe Biden's not even going to be the nominee anyway, so I don't even know why they're worried about it. But still, I guess it's because the Republicans have spent so much time, Trump has spent so much time, Fox News has spent so much time building up this corruption, this supposed corruption case with the Bidens, that they have to keep going on it, or else what? They're going to drop it? And then what? There are people out there that legitimately believe, no. You got to look into super shady stuff, super secret corruption. And Trump's going to put a stop to it. So basically, they're stuck. These Republican senators are basically stuck. Mnuchin's stuck because Donald Trump still believes in this insane conspiracy theory. Okay. So there's that, right? Now, if you want to compare it to the fact that Trump is very likely a tax cheat, very likely has laundered money through real estate, and possibly even laundered money for the Saudis and the Russians and the Turks as well. Those are actual crimes. And you would find evidence of that in Donald Trump's tax returns. You would also find evidence that points to Trump not being as rich as he is. So it's no wonder why they don't want to actually release those tax returns. So now I've got a quote here. And this is from Ashley Shapital, spokeswoman for Senator Ron Wyden, the highest ranking Democrat in the Finance Committee. They said, quote, "The administration told House Democrats to go pound sand when their oversight authority was mandatory while voluntarily cooperating with the Senate Republicans' sideshow at lightning speed. It's hypocritical for the Treasury Department to stonewall Democrats' request while granting Republican access to material on Hunter Biden." That's, of course, Steve Rosenthal, a senior fellow at the Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center. He said it was hard to see what legislative purpose Republicans are after in regard to Hunter Biden. Well, there's no legislative purpose. It's all basically a way to go after Hunter Biden and Joe Biden specifically. So they're using their time, effort, and our money in order to chase a witch hunt in this case. This is the actual witch hunt, right? So it's not about legitimately fighting corruption. Republicans are just launching political investigations into their enemies in order to boost turnout for this election, I think, by throwing out the red meat to the base, and two, to punish the Democrats for trying to dare to impeach Donald Trump. And not to mention, look, this is Chuck Grassley, right? Chuck Grassley was asking for the records. Chuck Grassley is also proving his loyalty to the president. So, again, go ahead with this investigation. You're not going to find anything. And look, if you do, that's also actually a good thing. Because unlike Republicans, I actually do care about corruption. And a lot of us on the left, the progressives especially, we do care about corruption. So if you do find something on Joe Biden that is actual corruption, that is actual him breaking laws, U.S. or Ukrainian laws, well, then wonderful. We'll talk about that and we'll give you credit for it. But I think that is very unlikely to happen because all this is just a way to help Donald Trump politically with his base, and for Senate Republicans to once again prove that they have bent the knee. Switching gears, we're going to get away from Trump, and we're going to good news in the Democratic primary. Okay. Oh, by the way, a couple of comments here from the audience. Jonathan Andrzejczyk says, let me get that out of here. Jonathan Andrzejczyk says, Trump said he would release his taxes, his big, beautiful tax returns. They would be better than anyone has ever seen. He's given no reason to think he wouldn't release them. Oh, big, beautiful, the best tax return, the greatest tax return. Yeah. And then added, Steve lied when he said that they could just turn and look into anyone's taxes and then look into anyone's taxes. Good thing I'm sitting down for this. A little warning next time. Sorry, man. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, now let's go to the next story. Now, following Bernie Sanders' popular vote win in Iowa, where he had about 6,000 more votes than his rival Pete Buttigieg, more Democrats say that they are likely to vote for Bernie Sanders in the primary. So now this is a new poll here from Morning Consult, and they found that a full 52% of respondents said that they were leaning more towards backing Bernie Sanders for the Democratic nomination following the Monday's Iowa caucuses. So now this whole Iowa caucus blow up in the shady app, and then people, the company behind it being staffed with, Hillary Clinton staffers, Obama staffers, having links to big billionaire donors, etc. That app failing, and the phone lines failing, and then the vote being delayed for several days. And still, at the end of all of this, you have more people that are in favor of voting for Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders wins on this, even after all of that. That is amazing. That's amazing. So now, of those, to gauge enthusiasm, right? 29% said that they were much more likely to vote for Senator Bernie Sanders, while only 23% said that they were somewhat more likely. So still, more likely, 52%. Now, compare that to the other numbers. Now, surprisingly, Joe Biden didn't do too badly in this, right? So no, Joe Biden got crushed. He got fourth place in Iowa. He did not do very well. It might have been him telling everybody to go and vote for somebody else, which then they did. So now, even so, in this poll, about 48% of respondents said that they were more likely to vote for him. Now, I think that could be explained by a lot of people that supported other candidates going to Joe Biden and saying, okay, well, look, some of our candidates, Amy Klobuchar, did not do very well. Elizabeth Warren did not do very well. She was in fifth. And so, no, she was, I believe she was fifth. They decided, okay, we're going to go with Joe Biden. Okay, so now there's that. Now, what about Pete Buttigieg? Pete Buttigieg. Well, did he get a good bump from this? Well, in New Hampshire, he did get a bump. And so we'll be completely fair about that. We're interested in facts here. But as far as this poll goes, only about 38% of respondents said that they were more likely to back Buttigieg. Of those respondents, only 14% of such said that they were much more likely to vote for him. That kind of shows me that there is not a lot of enthusiasm among Mayor Pete voters. Okay. Now, establishment media, however, they have a lot of enthusiasm for Pete Buttigieg. They are falling all over themselves to boost him. And so I don't understand. He doesn't have a viable path to the nomination. He's going to get completely wrecked in South Carolina, as well as the rest of the southern states. But okay, well, go ahead. It's because African Americans generally do not like Mayor Pete. So it's disastrous, right? He's not going to be able to pull together the Obama coalition, which was one of the same problems that Hillary Clinton had in 2016. She was not able to pull this coalition, that, for example, in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, to pull working class African American voters and people of color to her side. And so that's a big problem for Mayor Pete. And it's even worse because given his terrible past with African Americans. All right, so now uh, head-to-head matchups between Pete and Donald Trump. Now I know you could say, well, it doesn't really matter. It's still too early to do general election matchups between Trump and Pete. I get it, right? But I'm sort of using this as a bit of a metric to show some patterns here. And Mayor Pete's patterns against Donald Trump, not good. When you do head-to-head, either Pete barely wins within a percentage point, and you have other polls that show Donald Trump winning by 2 to 3 percentage points. Disastrous. Now, here we have a comparison again between Buttigieg and Sanders. 26% of respondents said that they were somewhat or much less likely to vote for Sanders. This is the negatives now. While 29% said the same of Biden and 28% saying the same for Buttigieg. So the Biden numbers, of course, they're disastrous. 29% are less likely to vote for Biden, 28% for Buttigieg, but you have Bernie Sanders that comes out looking pretty good. Now, the overall, the Morning Consult poll also showed the overall support for Sanders and Buttigieg both had increased 3% and 5% respectively. Sanders came in first as the top choice of 25% of Democratic voters nationwide. Biden was close at 24% and a drop of 5% before Iowa. So again, reflecting his really, really poor showing in Iowa. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg came in third with 15%, a decrease of 1%, and Buttigieg fourth at 12%. So Elizabeth Warren, of course, has 11%, and she has been losing voters as well. So, look, from what we can see, Bernie Sanders is the front runner. You can't really argue that anymore or argue against that anymore, okay? He is a front runner, and he has the best chance at winning the Democratic nomination, as well as the best chance of defeating Donald Trump. Okay. I'm going to take a break. We'll come back. We've got more stories. We got Elizabeth Warren's campaign facing some issues with people of color. And so then we have a couple of stories on Pete Buttigieg. And man, those are disastrous. Stay right here. Around the Nation. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes.
Mike Pounds.
Oh my God. Welcome back to the show. Round the Nation right here, TWT Nation. It sounds just like Krusty the Clown. I'm serious. It's, oh my God. You put those next to each other. It's Krusty the Clown. All right, anyway. So let me give some patron shout outs here. First, I want to thank Ralph Crawford and DGH. So those are new patrons for the month. You can sign up to support independent progressive media by going to patreon.com/TYTNation. You can also become a channel member as well. All of that, of course, goes to help the show. All right. Anyway, one comment that I thought was really funny. Chasis says, "Let's go full Venezuela and eat that rat." Referring to Pete Buttigieg. That is awesome. Love it. Okay. Anyway, you guys are great. Moving on. Elizabeth Warren's Nevada campaign is having a bit of a personnel problem. Now, according to a report in Politico, her campaign has lost 6 women of color when they decided to quit, thanks to what they call a toxic work atmosphere. So now, field organizer Megan Lewis had talked to Politico about this. She was one of the women that quit, and she said, quote, "During the time that I was employed with Nevada for Warren, there's definitely something wrong with the culture. I filed a complaint with HR, but the follow-up I received left me feeling as though I needed to make myself smaller or change who I was to fit into the office culture. I felt like a problem, and like I was there to literally bring color into the space, but not the knowledge and voice that comes along with it." That's another former staffer who would wish to remain anonymous. She added, We all were routinely silenced and not given a meaningful chance in the campaign. Complaints, comments, advice, and grievances were met with an earnest shake of the head and progressive buzzwords, but not much else. So that's that's Nevada. That's inside the Warren campaign. Now, in addition to feeling personally marginalized, they said, the woman said that the campaign did not prioritize getting campaign literature in Spanish, hiring Spanish fluent organizers, or hosting events in Spanish. Now, look, in Nevada, that is incredibly important. You want to reach out to the Latino community, Latino, because, look, they're a huge section of the electorate. They're very, very important to build a coalition to win with. And so, yes, of course you want to reach out. But apparently the Warren campaign there, whoever's in charge, decided, no, we're not going to do that. Really? So, look, that does not look good, right? I think the most devastating quote here is about just basically being color added to the mix without being listened to. The whole point of bringing on people of color is to get their experiences, is to get their knowledge, and to get their voice. If that is being denied and you're just bringing them there, well, there's a word for that. Token. Bringing these women on as a token. Devastating, right? So now, Warren did respond to this. She told Boston's WBTS, quote, "So I just heard about this, and I believe the women who have spoken up, and I believe them unequivocally, and I apologize to them personally. It's important to me to try to build an organization that is diverse and inclusive and open and lets everyone bring their whole self to work every day. But I recognize that the legacy of racism and oppression pervade everything that we do in this country, and so for me, this is about taking personal responsibility, which I do, and being determined that we will have accountability in this organization and keep doing better every day." So that's obviously a gigantic statement, but I think a good one nonetheless, right? So yeah, she takes ownership of it. She says, look, I apologize. Obviously, my campaign did not do very well on this regard, and so I apologize. And yes, I like the nod to, of course, systemic racism, the legacy of oppression, All that stuff is fantastic. Now, what is she going to do about it? I don't necessarily know. But, well, I mean, we'll see what kind of steps that she takes, because I think that's a little bit more important. But an apology is good as well. Now, the apology actually was pretty good for Miss Lewis, who said, quote, "I think it's a great response. I appreciate her apology. I love Elizabeth Warren, and I'm more excited than ever to caucus for her." Look, I think it was a genuine apology. So not only that, but I'm actually not going to blame the Warren campaign. And here's why. Campaigns are rather large, okay? As a candidate who is constantly running around, doing speeches, meeting people, organizing, doing all that stuff, the constant travel, I don't think you can properly micromanage and see everything that goes on, especially in other states that you're technically, like, literally not in. So, okay, you can't do that, right? And other campaigns have had similar issues, right? For example, the Sanders campaign back in 2016 had issues where women who worked for the campaign didn't get paid the same as the men working on the campaign. So obviously that's a huge problem, right? Some of them also said they were even sexually harassed by the staff, forcibly kissed, and then of course when they had gone up the chain to the chair of the area, the HR in that area, they didn't get a whole lot of help in that. Okay, so look, every campaign, they sometimes hire bad people that do bad things. And so, look, just like on, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders said, "Look, I didn't know anything about it, and I'm going to go, and now that I know, I'm actually going to do something about it." And Bernie Sanders was a little bit more frank in his answer. He says, "Look, how am I supposed to know? I'm out there traveling the country. I'm giving speeches. I'm doing my message. Obviously, I didn't know that this was going on. Now that I know that this is going on, I'm actually going to fix it." And I think that's the right response, even if he says it in a way that wasn't palatable to the establishment, right? And he got a lot of flack for saying that. So now afterwards, he brought them out there to Washington to speak to them personally about their experience and what he can do to actually fix the situation. He ended up, the campaign paid for their flights, their hotel accommodations, and had a meeting to figure this out. Okay. Now, he also apologized to any woman who felt that she was not treated appropriately, and added, and this was before he started running his campaign for 2020, quote, "We will do better next time." Again, just like Elizabeth Warren, a fine answer, right? Warren and Sanders campaigns, by the way, they weren't the only one with some of these issues. Pete Buttigieg's campaign, staffers from his campaign had voiced complaints that it was not an inclusive workplace. So, kind of the same issue that Warren's campaign had. Some Latino and Latina staff said that they had been asked to translate campaign materials into Spanish despite not being able to speak that language. "Oh, well, you're Latina. You should be able to speak Spanish." No, not. Look, not every person who is Latino can speak Spanish. That is a ridiculous stereotype, right? I mean, that's like coming to somebody who is German descent, right? Maybe third generation, second gen, whatever, right? And saying, "Hey, I got this thing in German. Can you translate it?" No, I can't. I don't know the language. That's ridiculous, right? So it's that assumption, right? Pranay points out in the chat, Hillary's team had more sexual harassment. More sexual harassment than Bernie Sanders' team. So look, again, this just shows how campaigns, all these different campaigns, do sometimes run into these issues. James Watson points out, it just shows you how rampant sexism is in America that would even appear in Bernie's campaign. And that is another excellent point from a member. So thank you, James. And so look, again, there is that issue, and it happens in every single campaign. So that's why, again, I'm not going to go around blaming Pete Buttigieg, right, for that. There's definitely other things, other racial blind spots in Pete Buttigieg, the candidate himself, and maybe that does have a small effect on the culture. And I think the smaller the campaign, the more of an effect you have coming from the top. For example, Amy Klobuchar is notoriously mean to campaign staffers. So, like throwing staplers and stuff. So all of that. But again, I don't blame Elizabeth Warren for this. And I don't blame Bernie Sanders for what happened in his campaign. Really, these issues are always going to crop up. What really matters is what you do to fix that, to address that, and to make sure your workspace is inclusive and as equitable as possible. Okay. I think that's all I have on that. So let's move on. So let's go to Sneaky Pete, which I did not know until today that was an actual title of a show. Right. So Sneaky Pete. Okay, anyway. All right. The campaign of Mayor Pete Buttigieg is being called out for doctoring its own debate result or a debate video. Let me start that again. The campaign of Mayor Pete Buttigieg is being called out for doctoring its own debate videos with canned applause. Now, this is captured by Twitter user Raphael Shamunov and spread by the pro-standards group, the Center for Popular Democracy in Action. Video of Mayor Pete's most recent town hall is placed right next to an ad cut by the Buttigieg campaign for a side-by-side comparison to show you what it was really like versus what the team had actually added in there. So let's take a look at that comparison.
Statistically, we run the risk of being the first generation in American history to actually be worse off economically than our parents if nothing is done to change the trajectory of this economy. To me, that is not just a concern for our generation. It's a concern that calls on us to build an alliance among generations to try to make sure that the future really is better than the past. And you don't get that by promising to turn back the clock. You get that by finding ways to make change work for us before we're all disrupted out of a good livelihood by it.
Let me introduce you to Tyler Lentz, who recently graduated from business school. He works for a community bank in the Austin suburb.
All right, so the difference there, if you didn't catch it, is at the end of Team Pete's video, you had the normal applause that was there, and then it went to enthusiastic applause, which just didn't happen. That's not the reality of the situation. Now, I'm going to provide the links in the description of this video in case you're skeptical, which we should all be, of course. And CPD Action actually provides links to the originals. So you can look at the original CNN video, and then you can see Mayor Pete's, of course, his ad that was cut, showing the very, very enthusiastic applause. So with that established, you might be thinking, okay, why does this matter? Is this really that big of a deal? I mean, it's just some applause. He gets applause later on. So what? Well, the problem here is, well, there's a couple of issues with it, right? For one, it makes it appear that there's more enthusiasm and support for Pete than there actually is. It's kind of selling people a false image in a way that makes Pete seem a little bit more popular than he is, and therefore more electable. It's these little tricks that advertisement, right? That's part of advertisement. And that's what this is, right? Now, I understand that campaigns are there to make that happen. That's their whole goal, is to make sure that this candidate is more popular and gets more electable, right? But Mayor Pete seems to have a habit of stealing things that isn't his, right? And this is, again, I can show you the history, right? For one, Buttigieg has been caught faking black endorsements with the Frederick Douglass plan. Back in November of last year, his campaign falsely said that 3 prominent black figures in South Carolina supported his Douglass plan for Black America. In late October, Buttigieg's campaign released an article published in the HBCU Times praising this plan, citing an open letter on behalf of Columbia City Councilwoman Tamika Devine, Rehoboth Baptist pastor and state representative Ivory Thigpen, who, by the way, is a Bernie Sanders co-chair of the state, as well as a Bernie Sanders supporter, and Johnny Cordero, chair of the state party's Black Caucus, in addition to more than 400 Douglas plan endorsers that were supposed to be Black. Now, according to a report in The Intercept, an investigation, they found that none of those three people had actually supported Buttigieg as a candidate, and two of the three never even endorsed his Douglas plan at all. And to top it all off, half of those alleged 400 Black supporters on that list that supported the plan, 42% of them were white. He also, over the last few days, and this has been big news, claimed an Iowa victory before the numbers even came in. That, of course, had the effect of disenfranchising the vote of POC-heavy satellite caucuses that actually did go for Bernie Sanders. Now, Pete also lied about the no fossil fuel money pledge, right? So it says, I'm not going to take any money from, people that are working in the fossil fuel industry, right? Now, Buttigieg had hosted a fundraiser in a wine cellar or wine cave with a man named Craig Hall. Now, Craig Hall runs a firm that funds fossil fuel infrastructure projects. So he's a bundler, right? And so he's going to get people in that industry. He's going to bundle that money for Pete Buttigieg and give to his campaign. So now it's not just that, it's PACs, it's bundlers. And so some of that money could be coming from executives in the fossil fuel industry, which would, of course, violate the no fossil fuel money pledge. But he does so in a way, by doing it this way, try to sneak around that pledge, which is why he gets the name Sneaky Pete. And then, of course, his campaign right before the fourth quarter, fundraising totals, launched a contest. Now, this is an interesting contest. I covered all this on the show. This contest was designed to see which supporter could give the candidate the smallest unique donation. So it's to get a whole bunch of people to give the minimum that they can, the smallest amount possible. Now, why does that matter? What effect does that have? It skews the results. It makes it seem that Pete Buttigieg has more grassroots support, more smaller donations than what he actually does, so that he can come out and later on and say, look at me. I have much lower donations. And so I'm grassroots funded. In reality, he's astroturfed. So these are slimy politician moves. And so these videos, just to add on to that, right? The entire theme of him being slimy, dishonest, and doing so in the super gross, underhanded politician way, where they can say, oh, no, technically we weren't lying. I mean, they did clap, after all. I mean, if you want to, by the way, speaking of clap, right? I know it doesn't really matter, but still, there's this video.
How do we feel when we have
Sorry, that's the wrong video. Let's go to the right video.
By having better hands guided by better values on those pulleys and levers of American government. So can I look to you to spread that sense of hope to those that you know? Come on.
Please clap.
All right. Anyway, let's move on. We got one more story here. All right. Thought Following the Iowa caucus, Senator Bernie Sanders has stepped up his attacks against Mayor Pete Buttigieg and his billionaire donors, and he did so brilliantly in this next video.
It's in the Democratic Party right now. And I'm reading some headlines from newspapers about Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg has most exclusive billionaire donors of any Democrat. That was from Forbes. The Hill. Pete Buttigieg tops billionaire donor list. Fortune. Pete Buttigieg takes lead as big business candidate in 2020 field. Washington Post. Pete Buttigieg lures even closer look from Wall Street donors following strong Iowa caucus performance. Forbes magazine. Here are the billionaires backing Pete Buttigieg's presidential campaign. I like Pete Buttigieg, nice guy. But we are in a moment where billionaires control not only our economy, but our political life. Now, you may disagree with me on this issue. Fine. I don't think everything that we say is 100% correct. It needs discussion. Nobody has all of the answers. But that's basically the issue. Whose side are you on? Do you think if you're collecting money from dozens and dozens of billionaires, you're going to stand up to the drug companies? And you're going to throw their CEOs in jail if they have acted criminally in killing people all over this country with opioids that they knew were addictive and killing people?
And of course, he goes on, basically making the point that, hey, if you're taking money from billionaires, then you're not going to serve the people. And he's absolutely right about that. And by the way, all those sources, they're all news sources, right? So you want to talk about billionaires? Well, then there you go, billionaire donors. And so this attack, by the way, follows a claim on a Facebook ad, by the way, where Bernie Sanders is alleged to have been taking dark money. Bernie Sanders does not take dark money. He does not take corporate PAC money or money from lobbyists or money from bundlers. In fact, every rich person that has donated to his campaign, he has literally returned the money. So, I mean, look, his average donation this quarter was around $18. And the most represented career for a Bernie donor is teacher. So educator, right? Then you got people that work at Target. You work at the post office. You got Amazon, right? People working in Amazon warehouses. Those are the people represented. Pete's donors, well, according to a Forbes analysis, are more likely to be located in either a wine cave or a yacht. Now, they write, while Sanders has refused donations from billionaires, Buttigieg has more exclusive billionaire donors than any other Democrat in the race. And so this is a analysis here. As of September 30th, 2019, when the Forbes analysis was done, Buttigieg had accepted donations from 40 billionaires and their spouses, 13 of whom have donated exclusively to the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana. Only one candidate had more billionaires than Buttigieg, Joe Biden, with 44. Now, it's actually Buttigieg that has more donors, billionaire donors, than Joe Biden. Now, many of Buttigieg donors have made their wealth in finance and investments, including hedge fund billionaires Bill Ackman, Philip LaFont, and Seth Klarman. Seth Klarman, of course, is related to Shadow, which is the company that made the app in Iowa that was a disaster. Now, two of the biggest deep-pocketed donors to Buttigieg also have connections to, you're going to love this, Donald Trump. As Hyatt Hotels heiress and retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Pritzker and Daryl Roth, the wife of Trump business partner Stephen Roth. Both have backed Buttigieg's campaign. Buttigieg also has the backing of a lot of people in the tech industry, including Wendy Schmidt, the wife of former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, and Netflix chief executive Reed Hastings, a duo that recently helped host a fundraiser for Buttigieg in Silicon Valley. So you have all of these wealthy billionaires that are giving money to Mayor Pete. And of course, Bernie Sanders is 100% right to point that out. He says, look, are you going to work for the regular person if you're getting money from all of these giant corporations? Now, I know whenever you bring this up, there's this indignant attitude when you point out, hey, man, look, you take all this corporate money, how are you going to serve the people? Their response usually is, how dare you? How dare you? But look, in reality, these are the people or corporations that Buttigieg is going to owe. And how does he return their investment or give them a return on their investment? Well, by serving their interests, by pushing for deregulation, tax cuts, corporate giveaways, all that stuff. And so it's important to know who is going to be prioritized in the next administration that we're going to have. Obama worked for the banks. He got a lot of money from the banks and then bailed them out to the tune of trillions of dollars in bailout money. This is why, all while, of course, regular people suffered and lost their homes, lost their jobs, and lost a large amount of wealth, especially the African American community. You have to know who these politicians are going to serve before you vote for them. And from what I can see, Bernie Sanders is the only person who I know is going to serve our interests because we are the ones that fund Bernie Sanders. Okay. There we go. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. We're going to have of course, a great weekend. So we'll see you on Monday. I'm sorry. I'm really hungry, so I can't think. So that's my brain is like currently not functioning at 100% capacity. So yeah, have a great weekend, guys. I'm going to go get something to eat. Hopefully you have a great weekend and see me back right here, 3 p.m. Eastern, Monday. Please like and share the stream. Please consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation, so I can afford dinner, or become a channel member, all that stuff. Thank you. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See you on Monday.
Please clap.
Why? You're getting nervous, man.
Oh, wow, I'm sorry. You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.